God made it all and we should stay like that. We need to give those people an identity and give the freedom to express themselves. And
what is it? छोटे मोटे घर के नुस्खे. Do they really work?
But they are not foolproof. The first thing that I want to say is
Hello everyone, welcome to another ravishing episode on healthcare and topics relating to women, sexuality and many other things around that. This time again we have Dr. Usha, who is a consultant gynecologist and a laparoscopic surgeon with us. So today I'm going to be asking you to stick through the entire 30 minutes because we're going to be talking about so many prominent issues, questions that you and I have that are perhaps most Googled but never asked. So let's get straight into the conversation. How are you doing, Dr. Usha?
I'm good, Diksha. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So today's topic for the podcast majorly is women's sexuality and perhaps gender identity, sexuality overall.
Very interesting.
So let's talk about this. We have all recently come across, so many genders that are being discovered and that are coming to light every single day. We initially started with just LG, which was lesbians and gays. Then we had B and T. And now we have QIA. And then we have plus, so which is everything else. So sexuality is a taboo in our society in terms of the gender disparity. It's more or less something like, I'm okay if you have it, like pride party, etc., all's well, but it shouldn't happen in my house. Okay?
Yeah.
Your take on that. Firstly, do you think that all of these genders actually exist and people are biologically created by God in a certain manner to have so many orientations, or is it just a mental phenomenon?
As a person, not as a doctor or a professional, if you ask me, the first thing that I want to say is bullshit.
Okay. Interesting.
But being in the medical profession, I do have the knowledge and a little bit of open-minded aspect of my mind where I want to look at everything and accept everything and to test and question and not just generally have a prejudiced opinion about everything.
Correct.
So if you ask me, yes, it is not black and white. But it's not like, God made it all and we should stay like that. No, God, I don't think any of us have stayed how God made us. Okay. When if we're going to be cutting our hair and, having implants and transplants and everything, that way we would have died without any of those.
Totally.
So I don't think we need to actually stick to that very, ancient kind of belief of God made it and we should let it stay like that. No, that's not true. There can be variations and we need to be able to have the open mind to accept the variation. But having said that, there was this BBC news I was watching a few months back, which said something like, 100 and something genders are there?
117.
I think that's taking it a little too far, even for my medical mind and even for the most open-minded mind.
Right.
So my real opinion is that, yes, we should have the liberty, we should have the open-mindedness to accept things which we do not think is actually in the conventional line. But at the same time, this kind of going completely overboard is actually causing a lot of confusion, especially among the teenagers. Okay, I have no problem, I have no judgment with somebody. There is a very, very small percentage, I feel, in the population. I might be entirely wrong. But to my eyes, there's a very small population which is gender and sexual orientation-wise different. Okay. Now, we need to give those people an identity and give the freedom to express themselves and be what God created them as.
Correct.
That does not mean that we confuse the rest of the 90% with, did God really create us this way or that way? I mean, that is what is being added to all the teenage minds who are very they're very quickly impressed by all these things, and especially the social media and what goes on the internet. So I have seen kids who are like teenagers who are looking like, okay, I do like the guy, but maybe I might like a girl. Let me try and see it. Now, this is where you're creating a lot of confusion.
Correct, correct.
If you put your mind to it, you probably will like a girl as well.
Anyone. Yes.
But do we really need to add that confusion? And where is that going to lead us? The
Correct.
whole point of accepting different genders and accepting different orientation is to let the people who have this difference live in the society without conflict and confusion.
Yeah.
Now, if this is all about avoiding conflict. You're born like this, and the society is making you something else, and you don't want that conflict. That's not kind to have that conflict. But if anything that we are saying and doing is creating conflict, I mean, why are we doing that? That is my answer to that.
Correct. No, I also agree that I think we're just creating problems for the heck of it, just because we want to be busy.
Yeah.
We're creating things on our mind. Yes.
Yeah, it's almost like we're trying to create news which doesn't exist.
Correct. That is it. Interesting much. So, now that we have so many genders, and we also have this tendency to actually fall for the other person, attraction, and this thing of having sex, okay? Now, a lot of people go out and experiment with different kinds of things to make their lives more exciting and so on. And in doing that, sometimes they undergo a lot of, pressures, okay? There's indeed a pressure of birth control, there's a pressure of premature ejaculation, then there is also erectile dysfunction, and so on and so forth. So primarily, let's first talk about some myths that surround birth control. Now, while condoms and so are considered widely accepted, but there's obviously an audience that doesn't want it, and they want to try something else. And the most weird one that I recently heard, and in fact this was in my trip to Egypt, is how you have the dough. The dough with which we make the rotis, okay? If you take a portion of the dough, insert it in your vagina, you will not get pregnant. And for me, that was like horrendous, because I was like, my goodness, how would I remove it? And, getting all that hassle. And so let's talk about these common issues about birth control, etc. How true are these, what is it, chote mote ghar ke nuske? Do they really work?
Now, if atta could prevent conception, why hasn't any pharmacological company pounced on it and made loads of atta tablets to put in?
Totally.
So you think the big tycoons of the medical pharmaceutical industry would not actually make money out of atta?
Right,
so the very
right.
fact, forget about me being doctor and trying to say that these are not true. For anybody watching this, I'll say, do you believe that any of these big companies would not make atta tablets if it was going to work? The very reason they're not making it doesn't work. Okay.
Correct.
Right. Now, so yes, I agree with you that there are a lot of people who kind of take contraception as something, this is medicalized. I don't want to go on a tablet. I don't want to use a condom. They have their own reasons for not using any of those, despite the condom companies trying their best to make them as thin as possible, as to retain the sensation, and giving lubrication, everything.
Correct.
But still people don't use them.
Sure.
Still people don't use birth control pills, saying that I'm gaining weight because of the birth control pills. I say to my patients who are on any kind of hormones, whether it's birth control or anything else, I say the first 2 kilos probably you will gain, because there is going to be a water retention with any hormone.
Sure.
Anything more than that, if you're gaining 10, 20 kilos of weight, honestly don't blame the pill.
Correct.
There's something wrong with your metabolism. You better go get it checked. Or something wrong with your lifestyle. That's more likely. You better go sort it out. So to me, as a doctor, I really, really want to tell people, please do not try any of this ghar wale nuske, okay? Kaam nahi karte. Yes, there are certain things like any of the things that we eat and drink, they all have certain inhibitory and excitatory factors. Okay,
Correct.
somebody's libido might get a little better with something, and somebody's it might decrease the fertility kind of a thing.
Sure.
But they are not foolproof. And for any of the things that we take via food,
Right.
you probably need to be eating kgs of it
Yes.
before sex.
Right.
If you say
for it to
papaya
have an
is-
effect, yes.
So if you say papaya is going to prevent pregnancy, or if it's going to help you miscarry, you
Right.
probably have to eat a truckload of papaya
Right,
before you
right.
tried sex. Do you want to do that, or do you want to just use a condom and take a pill?
No,
which is very
in,
easy
in,
to do
in
that.
TV serials, they show, they she just had a small slice, she got pregnant. And I know that, there are so many people who actually watch, misbelieve, and then they're like, oh, now it doesn't work. And I'm like, no, you're doing the wrong thing in the first place
छोटा
itself.
सा एक पपाया का पीस पेट में जाती है,
हाँ.
उससे शी भी नहीं निकलेगी. Okay, pregnancy
वो बच्चा
निकाल-
क्या निकालेगा? Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So I think there are soundproof methods of contraception. If you're using a condom,
Yeah.
it works in majority of
Many
the
ways, yes.
large number of people. If you are using contraceptive pills, if you're taking it on time and you're not missing them, then it works to a large extent. I mean, none of them are 100%. Okay, they're all about 90% kind of success rate. And you have the coils for people who are married already and trying to space the children. Coils work very well. So the ones which are medically kind of approved,
Yes.
those are the only ones you
And
should
the
be
safest
using.
also,
Yeah.
perhaps. We may not end
Yeah.
up, infecting ourselves.
Yes.
And doing spoiling ourselves for perhaps the
Yeah.
future as well.
The only natural thing that works actually to a large extent is the safe period.
Right.
Okay. Now, if you are looking for that, the limitations of that is that you need to have a regular period so that you can
cycle,
actually
yes.
identify your safe period. In spite of that, we are only predicting the next cycle to be regular, so it might not be exactly entirely safe, but it still works quite well if you can kind of count your day one. It's a 28-day cycle. The day one is the day you have your bleeding. And then you count up till the 7 days. Those 7 days are actually supposed to be safe. And then the 7 days before your periods, that's the 21st day to 28th day, that is safe. Okay. Now, in between, it may not be it may
Right.
not be
You're
safe.
closer to
Although
your
your
ovulation, yes.
your ovulation is only on the 14th day approximately,
Yes.
but still all these days are considered to be unsafe. And having said that, I have read about these, having sex during the period is safe. It is. If it is your natural period
Right.
and you're ovulated 14 days before and you've had a period, it is safe. It is entirely safe. However, getting a bleeding does not mean that is a period.
Correct.
Okay.
You may
So-
just be staining
Yeah,
or something.
so sometimes people might have a bleeding which was not their actual period and they think that's the period.
Correct.
And you can have a little bit of bleeding during ovulation as well.
Right.
So in that case, you're actually in the unsafe zone.
Oh,
Okay. So unless you have an extremely regular period and you know your period is coming on time and there's no change in the pattern of the period, then yes, you probably are very safe.
Sure. There's another misconception that during sex, it's all very hunky-dory and there's no pain. And a lot of women lately have started even experiencing pain. Is it normal to experience pain during sex or no?
Okay, I do get that there are two aspects to this. This is like the first intercourse and the later ones. Okay. Now, the first intercourse, when the hymen breaks, it is painful for almost everyone. Okay. So that is considered as something which is pain, which is not unbearable, that you don't actually let it happen. Okay. So which means it is humanly possible to bear that pain, and which kind of, later on gets better and better with every time. Okay. However, people who have been having sex already and they start having pain during sex, you need to get checked.
Sure.
Because there could be something else like endometriosis or pelvic infection or whatever. So that is not normal. That's not expected. So you've been having a good sexual life, absolutely no pain. And then one fine morning you start having pain and that continues. So that's not normal. Okay. In that, the ones who are having for the first time, I've had a few patients of mine who they've never been able to consummate marriage because of the pain. The first intercourse never happened. Okay. and they've been married for 2 years, 3
Wow,
years,
are you
4 years.
serious?
It is. I mean, you would be amazed. I mean, the ones that I've seen very few, probably about 5 patients or so. But I have a feeling there might be many more
Correct.
actually trying this and then thinking that something is wrong with them and they can't do it, and all kinds of difficulty to come up and say I'm having a problem with this.
Yes.
Okay. Now the first thing is that most of these people are a little scared of sex, scared of pain, and what happens is the first time the fault is actually with the men. Okay. Now I'll tell you why the fault with the man. It's not with the man who's a bad man or the man who's not an inconsiderate man. The fault is with the man who's very considerate. Okay. So if somebody comes to me that they cannot consummate the marriage and they've been struggling for the last 2 years, I'll say your man must be a really, really considerate one, that he gets so scared of the pain that he's causing,
That
he
he
withdraws.
stops. Yes,
So every
yes.
time this kind of encourages a cycle of you try and then it doesn't happen. Next time the pain is more, you're tensing more. So it goes on. And at some point it becomes like they are like, they're almost giving up. Okay.
Correct.
Now those kind of patients, I tell them, I tell the man usually, get her drunk one day, just do it. I know
Correct.
that's not what
Correct.
a doctor has to say
Correct.
that,
Correct.
but literally that is the answer.
Yes,
So
yes.
when they come to me, I examine them, and because I'm being very gentle and I'm a female and they're relaxed, I start off with doing a 1-finger examination, and I say, okay, fine, there's no abnormality, there's nothing preventing, and then I can put the 2 fingers. So gradually I gain trust over a few weeks with the patient, and then I keep examining them, and then I tell them, look, I'm putting my 2 fingers in, and you're not having any pain, because you're relaxing, you're trusting me now. So this is it. There is no pain. So once they realize that it is the
Easier.
mental block that is developed,
Yes.
they're able to overcome it. And obviously we have things like cones which help us to dilate the vagina. They can use it at home. Local anesthetic creams are there which will prevent the fuss. So the whole point is making them to have sex once.
Correct.
Okay. Now, it all is based on the pain which is leading to pleasure. So if they have sex once and they have an orgasm next, it's all like us. We don't mind walking 10 miles to a hotel
To actually
when
find
we
a
know
room.
some real good food is
Yes,
waiting for you there.
yes,
So
correct.
we need to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
So in these cases, what happens? The orgasm never happened. The pain keeps happening.
Right. And so you're never
So,
excited.
Yeah. So once I only need to get them to do it once.
Right.
After
and then
that,
they'll
they're
know.
fine.
Yeah.
I got one of these patients who sent me a message at 3:00 in the night
Night.
once.
Oh my goodness.
I'd been treating her for almost 6 months. Treating is nothing really. Examining and kind of explaining and all that. And she messages me at 3:00 in the night. Dr. Usha, we did it. Thank you very much.
I can understand.
So there are things which are, so it is, it's not having pain during sexual intercourse first time is natural. Yes. Okay. God made it like that. However, it shouldn't be so painful that you will never be able to have sexual intercourse.
Correct,
So if you're going through that phase, you've been married and marriage has not been consummated for a month or 2 or 6 months, please seek help.
Right.
We can help you with that. Okay. Now somebody is already having sex, no problems, and then suddenly starts developing pain. You have something going on there. See us.
Correct. Makes sense. Now that we've talked about this, I want to also talk about having children. A lot of couples want to have children, but there's this thing now. People are getting married late. Okay,
Yeah.
getting married late, then waiting for the right time to be financially, mentally secure, and then having children. What are some best practices women can put in place to be mentally and physically ready for childbirth? Like, when is the time that you would say, okay, now you're ready for childbirth?
I don't think there is ever a right time is my answer to that.
Right.
Because something or the other keeps cropping up, and you become a manager, you want to be the head of the institution, or you career goals always are not like going to stop at one point. None of us are going to say, okay, I became this and I'm going to relax the rest of my life now. We all continue to grow, okay? Similarly, all the comforts that we have, we have a 2-bedroom flat, we want a 3-bedroom flat. So these things keep on expanding. They never stop at that point. You have a villa, you want to have a 10-bedroom villa. So it kind of continues. So all of us need to know, especially the youngsters, need to know to balance between. I am not saying that somebody goes in and gets married at 22. I'm totally against people getting married at 22, okay? Because you have so much of life that you haven't experienced.
Sure.
And as a married couple and having children, you lose out on a lot of things, okay?
Correct.
So I say, you lead your life, you do whatever you want to, just, sort yourselves out first, and then, venture into marriage and kids. That's my advice to everybody. However, some people do take that a little further. They're thinking, okay, fine, let me finish this, let me finish that, let me finish the right time, waiting for the right time. You will realize that the right time actually
Has
went
gone
by, and you didn't realize that was the right
Yes,
time because
yes.
your eggs have now started
Correct.
coming down, okay?
Correct.
And the fertility is coming down as well. So my advice is anybody who's looking into motherhood for medical reasons, okay, after 35, the risks of a pregnancy increase. People can get pregnant even at 45 and deliver perfectly well with no problem. But there are chances that your fertility is reducing, the chance of miscarriage are more. You're then your body is developing hypertension, diabetes, all those kind of things. So your pregnancy becomes a little more high risk after 35. Okay. After
Correct.
40, definitely.
100%,
Okay.
100%.
So if you're around in the 30s, I say start looking at your life and say, okay, fine, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to do 2, 3, whatever, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let me take a break around here and complete this and then go ahead with the rest of it. You need to make that decision. That's very individualistic and everybody has to decide for their own. I got married. I did the same thing. Okay. I finished my post-graduation. I never wanted to get married before my post-graduation. I met my husband during my post-graduation, but we both decided that we want to kind of sort ourselves out. So I did my post-graduation, worked for 2 years. Before going to the UK, then I said, okay, let's get married now, and we go. And then after that, for about 3 or 4 years, since I was kind of trying to develop my career in the UK, I said, we'll put the child on hold. My reason for that was not because it was the right time as such. My reason was that when I have a child, I want to actually give 100% to the child. So, and that I felt I did a good thing. I had my first child at the age of 35. And when I had my child, I set my career aside. I was just doing my work, coming back, but not putting my heart and soul into what I was doing. And I put my heart and soul into the 2 children that I had that time. And I've never, ever regretted that.
Very nice.
So there is a time, but each one needs to find their time, as long as it's never too late.
True. And let's also talk about this latest concept. I call it latest. I know it's been there for some time. Egg freezing.
Yeah.
Okay. So for people who are actually above 30s or even 35, etc., hitting that age, and then it's like, okay, let's freeze our eggs and use it then. Is it okay to freeze your eggs? Second, how expensive can it get? And at what age do you think people should start thinking about freezing eggs?
I'll answer the first question because age again it depends on at what stage of your life you are in and what are your future plans and how are you placing this pregnancy part in your lifetime. Okay. Now, let's say you're 30 and it's not just placing the pregnancy, it's placing the man that you want to be pregnant with. Okay. Many people don't have a man in sight.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So when I say to somebody, especially those ones who are coming to me with endometriosis or something, I just tell them that, if you have a man in sight, which you're interested in, make a move now, because you better capitalize on that, get pregnant, finish your pregnancy, because this endometriosis is going to be a problem for your future, for your fertility.
Correct.
Okay. But when they don't have a man, I don't suggest that they go run out and get the next man who comes
Correct.
into picture and get married. So that's not really practical. So for those who don't have a man in sight, maybe it's a good idea to freeze your eggs.
Right.
Okay. But if you already have plans and, or you've got parents who are very actively looking and, you're thinking like in the next few years, you definitely have marriage on the cards, then you probably don't need.
But at what age should we start thinking about it?
That's again individualistic. So let's say you've reached 35. Okay.
Correct.
Till 35, you've been with your profession, everything, and you're
Right.
not thinking too much. You've reached 35 and you still have absolutely, you're very uncertain about whether you want to get married or, whether you'll find a man, whether you ever want to be pregnant. I think that's the point where you need to be stinting because you're going to soon cross 40.
Sure.
And then even the egg freezing, egg collection, all that can be a hassle after that. Okay,
Right.
it can be done. I'm not saying it can't be, but better to think. So I think 35, you should start putting down a chart of where do I want see myself in the
Right.
next 5 years. Like we do that for the career. Okay, where do you see yourselves in 5 years' time? Top of this management or whatever. But we don't, put that 5-year, 10-year vision into our personal lives. So if somebody sat down at 35 and said, where do I see myself in the aspects of marriage and children? And they say, okay, I want to have a child at 40 or I don't want to have a child, whatever. I recently had a patient who said, I would like to do the egg freezing. And I said, so tell me the reason. Her reason was, first of all, she was not very, very forthcoming. And then her partner said, I think you better be truthful. So she said, basically, I don't even want to have children. At this point of time, I'm like totally like, I don't want to have any children. I'm quite happy with what I have. But I'm little worried that if I change my mind in 10 years' time, then I will lose out on the option.
Correct.
So she at least thought about that kind of a thing. So that is important. You can have egg freezing, egg collection and egg freezing. Two things people need to know about it is, it's not a very simple procedure. You'll have
Yes.
to undergo, a good amount of medications to stimulate your ovaries and a small procedure, which is slightly painful. Some of them can be done under, anesthesia. But it is a procedure. So that you can't just walk into the clinic and say, freeze my eggs. That's not going to happen. It's kind of a
Correct.
protocol, okay? And the second thing is the expense. Not everybody can afford it.
Yes.
Okay. So in the UAE is very, very expensive. I mean, I don't know the exact cost of it, but it's very expensive. But outside of the UAE, like in Asian countries, it is much more cheaper.
Sure.
So it is a good option for somebody who has the money, who is not afraid of, the protocol, the medications, all that, and who's very clear about in their mind that this is what exactly I want for my future. It's a good option.
Interesting. And tell me, how good and reliable are these period tracking apps that we're using these days for conception, for monitoring our ovulation, etc.? How accurate are they?
This is a very funny one because I'm sure they're good, but a patient comes to me, I said, when did you have your periods and, how regular are your periods? That's a common question for a gynecologist to ask.
Correct.
And they take out this period app and I'm like, no, please don't show me that because I don't understand what they mean.
True.
Yes, people want to follow their app on the period on the app. It's fine. But honestly, do we need it is my question. Periods come every month, okay? Give and take a few days here and there. That's the regularity of the period. So if you're getting every month one period, don't even bother looking at the dates, okay? Only when they get irregular, you want to write it down, okay, I didn't get my period here, I got my period or whatever, it came 2 months late or whatever, or it came 15 days early. So that is when you need to really tracking. But nowadays, I see it's become a modern aspect of, all women who are working and who are educated think that tracking their period is the in thing, like,
Is the
trendy thing,
No,
I know
because,
my period.
it's very interesting. It even tells you like a few days before the ovulation, time to have sex. Okay.
Yeah, that is the most, what do you say, worst thing that you can do to yourself, okay?
Yes.
Now, I get fertility patients, okay?
Right.
They ask me, doctor, can you... So I explain to them the safe period because there are sometimes, you will be surprised that people don't know which is the
Correct.
fertile period. So they might regularly end up having sex in the in the safe period and leave out the fertile period without realizing, especially when husband is working, he's going out, coming back to different country, and all those skins, you're traveling, and then you end up you're having sex, but you're having it all the time in the safe period, and then you end up being infertile. So for that reason, to avoid that, I always explain to the patient. I said, okay, fine, look, this is your fertile period. And then say, don't put an app, don't buy those urine kits to check your ovulation. I said, that's the worst thing that you can do for yourself. And especially that's the worst thing that you can do for your man. because he goes bonkers because you're like, we have to have sex today. We have to have, I got to
That
get
whole
pregnant.
pressure, yes.
And that itself works as a stress and something against what you're trying to
It's
achieve.
not natural, yeah.
So what I tell people who are trying to get pregnant, however desperate you are, you've not been pregnant for 10 years, I don't care. Don't buy, don't get any of these apps. Don't buy any of those kits, okay? All I say is this is your fertile period. That week is your fertile period. You need to have alternate day sex, okay? I go one step above that. You don't need to have sex. Take that out of your mind. When you get your period day 1, mark your day 10 to day 17 as the week and put that as a romantic week. Make sure that week you both are together, you're having dinner, you're going out, being nice to each other, try and create the environment
Right.
and let the sex happen if it happens spontaneously.
Right.
It will happen. If you constantly, every
Think about
month,
it, push yourself, yes.
So if you constantly create that week as your romantic week, not as the sexual week, in 3 or 4 months' time, you start realizing you're actually bonding better during that week. And,
Correct.
and it's all about bonding, and then the sex happens as a natural, end point of that.
Correct.
So that is the best way. I know I might sound old-fashioned, but that's the best way if you want to have a stress-free sexual life and fertile life.
Totally, totally. And we have women that are actually experiencing menopause. Okay? And at that point in time, they become a bit irrational,
They become
irritated, become mad. Their hormones are all over the place. And also, they're very scared of menopause because they think that will also affect their sexual life. How true is that, and how should perhaps women deal with menopause?
Okay. Now, menopause is something I want to do a podcast with you, Diksha, on
separate
menopause
one.
itself because
Yes.
it is a big story
Yes.
of every woman's life. A story which is neglected by the rest of the society and the men.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I have these couples who come to me, old couples, old in the sense above 50s, where the wife is either perimenopausal or going through menopause. And then she comes and tells me, doctor, this is happening, my mood is not good, my body weight is increasing, and I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. And the man sitting next to her is like, ठीक है, बहुत कुछ बोल रही है. I mean, she's always grumbling about these kind of things. I can see the feeling in him that such irrelevant symptoms, and she's telling the doctor, okay. The only time I get the attention of the man is I tell the woman, I have been through it, I know exactly what you're going through, okay. And the first time she realizes somebody is acknowledging the symptoms,
Correct.
not brushing off as something that is,
चिड़चिड़ी है, कोई रही है, ऐसे
ऐसे ही
normal
चल रहा है, इसका टाइम पास ड्रामा चल रहा है.
correct, correct.
So then I say that these are real symptoms. They may
Correct.
appear like, dramabazi, but they're not. Actually, they're real
Correct.
symptoms.
Correct.
And once it's acknowledged, it becomes easy for a woman to actually find solutions. Some of them have
Totally.
solutions, some of them don't have solutions. But at least you can work towards it.
Yes.
Okay. So that, as I said, we'll do a complete podcast on that, how to deal with menopause. Not every woman experiences similar symptoms. Not in the same intensity. So some of the women, and women are their own enemies in every aspect in life. Some of them who don't experience those symptoms look at women who are experiencing symptoms as, oh, you are the weak-minded, you are the, grumbling kind of a troublesome
हमारे
person.
साथ तो कुछ भी नहीं हुआ, तेरे साथ ही हो रहा है, सारी प्रॉब्लम तेरे में ही है.
So, wo wala. So that kind of discrimination also comes. And then the woman starts thinking, oh my God, I'm the person who's not normal in this. No, if you're experiencing menopausal symptoms, you're entirely normal. Okay. Somebody who's not experiencing is probably not
Correct,
normal.
correct.
Okay. And it depends not just on the hormones, it depends on how much of the social integration is there in the family, how much of support you're getting, and what kind of life you're leading, what's your career like, what's your social life like. Various aspects come into that play. So, but I will just address the sexuality bit of it. Sexuality, again, per se, may or may not have anything to do with menopause. Okay. Again, sexuality is sex as per se is not based only on the physical thing. It's a mental act which is translated into the physical act. So if all the other factors are conducive and very positive in and around you, menopause, there are women who are 25, 30 who have 3 children to look after, have absolutely no sex drive.
They're done.
The hormone, the body has got full load of hormones,
It's
but
done.
they have absolutely no drive.
Yes.
A person who is 50 plus, who's menopausal, children have gone off to university, husband and wife are at home, and they have a lot of time to spend together. And if one of them is retired,
They have all the more time.
all the more time. So you might actually find that your sex life is coming back again,
Yes,
taking
yes.
a U-turn
It's
and
reviving, yes.
getting revived. So a lot of things. And also it is the testosterone which actually increases your libido. Now, postmenopausal ovaries still secrete some amount of testosterone. So I don't think any woman who's worried about menopause, about sexuality and sex, about during menopause, you don't need to worry. Maybe if you have all the other symptoms and you're like going through a bad phase, then you have no interest in sex. If your overall well-being is sorted out, your sexuality should be fine. You should be able to enjoy this for the rest of your life.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. Well, Dr. Usha, it was amazing having you here and discussing so many interesting topics. I'm glad we touched on so many things, from menopause to birth control to, pain during sex and so many other things. Indeed, next podcast we'll talk about menopause entirely, have one proper dedicated discussion on this. For all our viewers, please find Dr. Usha's details in the description box. If there's anything that you have questions on any of the topics that we've discussed today, or perhaps anything else regarding women's health, please get in touch with her. Follow us on Instagram. Do give a thumbs up. Do hit a like. Do hit a subscribe button. And we look forward to seeing you next, completely discussing menopause in a full podcast. Thank you so much, Dr. Usha.
Thank you.
Thank you.